Who am I? And what can I do? So much needs doing. There are children who are hungry. There are people dying alone. There are floods and hurricanes sweeping whole towns away. Tornadoes swoop down from the sky and wreak havoc. There's drought and fire in the West, and some people turn their faces away and gain untold riches on the unfortunes of others. All while children are hungry and people are dying alone. Who am I? And what can I do? There is so much to be done, and I'm only one. I don't have great riches. I don't have endless capacity to do everything. I'm only one person. But what I can do is speak. I can rip the veil behind which evil is hidden. I can speak and tell others what is true. I can let them all know what is needed. We who think we are the only one can speak with our many, many voices and work with our many hands. Together, we can pay attention where attention is needed, and we can speak truth. And when we have an opportunity, we can speak that truth by voting. My voice joins with others, and together we vote. We can take our many voices and our many, many hands and work to change the world. And now I'm going to move over here. Can everyone hear me? Is that okay? All right. We are asked to consider 12 proposed amendments to the Florida Constitution the next time we vote, which is next month. These amendments will appear on our ballot. For every one of these proposed amendments, there are consequences which will affect us for many years. If one of them is adopted, it becomes the measure by which all our laws are formed. And if one of them is adopted, it can only be undone by another constitutional amendment. So as you look at them, you need to decide if this measure should be made permanent by putting it in the Constitution. Even if it's a good idea, does it need to be permanent? Or could it be handled with legislation and laws which are more easily adaptable to changing situations? Don't vote on a whim. These are serious considerations. There are certain things that you might not want to be engraved in stone in the Constitution. Taxes are a good example of that. Florida has no income tax, so it depends largely on property taxes. And the tax base needs to be flexible enough to respond to changes in the economy and in property values and in unforeseeable disasters that come along. So most people would rather have the flexibility of having taxes regulated with laws which can be changed than in the Constitution, where it would take a constitutional amendment to respond. So as you decide, think about if it's a good idea to take something that may be already working and put it in the Constitution where it can't be changed, or just leave it as it is in law. All right, now we're going to talk about what's on your ballot. Oh, I'll talk about the league in just a minute. This will be on your ballot when you look at it. There will be a Senate seat. You can read that. These are the things that you will see on your ballot, including the 12 Florida constitutional amendment proposed. The one thing that's not up there, if you live in Escambia County, there are 2 referendums that are tacked on the end, and I will add those. These slides were prepared by the League of Women Voters for the entire state, so they don't include our local referendums. Where do these amendments come from? The ones on the ballot come from 3 sources. 2 are by citizen initiative. That is Amendment 4 that we were just hearing about, that restores felons' rights. That's a citizen initiative. That means that lots of citizens went out and collected over 800 signatures on petitions in order to get this on the ballot. It's very important to a lot of people. So the other citizen initiative will come too. There are 3 of them that come from the Florida legislature. Now, you know who you voted for and who got into the legislature, so you know what to watch for when you are looking at the legislative proposed amendments. 7 are from an unusual body called the Constitution Revision Commission. The Constitution Revision Commission is a body of appointed, not elected, people, and it happens every 20 years. That's in the Constitution. So every 20 years, this body gets together and decides if things need to be changed in the Constitution, added, taken out, and so forth. Now, who are these people? They are appointed. A bunch of them come from the governor. I think is it 19? 15 from the governor. 9 each from the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Florida, and 3 are from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So those are people who are nominated. There is always the Attorney General of the state who is included in this particular body. And so they go around and they look at the Constitution and decide what happens. The ones that are proposed by citizens and by the legislature can cover only one issue, and it has to be pretty clear what that issue is. They are looked at after all the petitions are gathered or after it comes out of the legislature. They're looked at by a judicial body, which then decides whether or not they fit the criteria. Single issue, clear language. The ones from the Constitutional Revision Commission, which is the majority of the ones we're going to look at today, are not constrained like that. They are not constrained to be about only one issue. And some of them have 3 or 4 issues. And when you look at them, you need to look carefully and decide if there is something in that list of 3 or 4 that you absolutely don't want in the Constitution, and you would vote no, even though it would eliminate some that you might like. They also include a lot of things which are already covered in law and would just simply put them in the Constitution. So there's a lot to think about. Today, Today I'm speaking as a representative of the League of Women Voters. As an organization, the League is nonpartisan. We don't back candidates or parties, but we do take positions on issues. This does not mean that I, as an individual, can't like a particular party or a particular candidate. It's just when I speak for the League, I try to be totally even-handed. Some of my opinions may sneak through, but they're not supposed to. This is supposed to be totally even-handed. These slides were prepared by the League, and I hope everyone has one of these handouts. And this is like a class. You need to follow along, and you also, if you have a pen or a pencil, it's a good idea to make notes, because some of them get pretty complicated. Amendment number 1. See where it came from. This one came from the legislature. And what it does is it increases the exemption on homesteads by $25,000. So if your house is worth more than $125,000, instead of having a $50,000 exemption, it's got a $75,000 exemption. This might save you $100 or $200 on your annual taxes, but it comes at a cost. What happens with that loss of tax revenue? I've recently come across the actual figures of what would happen in Escambia County if this is voted yes. You would save a little bit of money, but Escambia County would lose $5.2 million. And the city of Pensacola would lose $650,000. Now that means that they would have to cut their budgets somewhere, and probably in services. Think about the services you use from the county and from the city, and some of those would probably have to be cut. This is just a list of who supports and who opposes, and I'm not going to read these to you. There's one of these for each of these amendments. Okay, amendment number 2. This also came from the legislature. Currently, there is in law a non-homestead taxes. That's real estate that nobody's living on. It would be rental property, or else it would be any sort of commercial establishment. Right now, those non-homestead taxes cannot go up by more than 10% per year. But that particular law expires in January. This is one that is a mixed bag, as are most tax questions. A vote yes would keep that 10% that cap, that the homestead, the non-homestead, the taxes couldn't go up by more than 10% per year. It would put that in the Constitution and make it permanent. A no vote would end those tax limits on non-homestead property and permit the tax rate to fluctuate depending on the worth of the property. Amendment number 3. This is another one that came from a citizen initiative. A lot of people felt very strongly about this and got out and got those petitions signed. And it gives voter control to gambling in Florida. This is just casino gambling. This does not include other kinds of gambling, card rooms and stuff like that. It would require, if this goes into effect, then the voters would get to decide whether or not we have casino gambling in Pensacola or Miami or whatever by a constitutional amendment, which would have to be passed. If you vote no, then the legislature could make that decision of where and when to put in a casino gambling. This has nothing to do with the Indian casinos, because they are totally separate from control by our legislature. So that's what happens. Right now, there are a lot of people who like this and nobody who doesn't like it, who came on record. Amendment number 4. You just heard about amendment number 4, so I'm not going to beat it to death. But you have in your handouts, you may also have a little card about it. And after the service is over, I encourage you to talk some more to our guests and see what else you can learn. Okay? This is all the people who support it and the one organization, whoever that is, that opposes it. Amendment number 5. This one also is from our Florida legislature. And this would require a 2/3 vote from both the House and the Senate before any increase in taxes or fees. If somebody thought that we needed to increase the cost of your fishing license, it would have to go through the House and the Senate with a 2/3 vote. This really is a very high bar for any sort of change to have to meet. Okay? A no vote would just permit things to go as they are now. Amendment number 5. Who wants it? Who doesn't want it? Amendment number 6 through 13. All of these came from the Constitution Revision Commission, and many of them have 3 or 4 totally separate issues in them. These are the ones where you watch for the poison pill. If there's something in there you really don't like, then you have to vote no on all of them, even though there may be a couple of things in there that you do like. So, amendment number 6. This one has 4 pieces. It expands the rights of victims of crimes while not protecting the rights of perpetrators of crimes. Right now, there is more equity in that, so that someone who is accused of a crime has a certain length of time to protest or to, what do you call it when you ask for another hearing? Anyway, it cuts that short. It also raises the retirement age for judges, totally unrelated issue, from 70 to 75. And it prohibits courts and judges from deferring to state agencies for interpretation when someone comes before them. For example, something that involves children or families, the judge could not take advice from the Department of Children and Families about that before making their ruling. So, who's in favor? Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Who supports it? 24 sheriffs and somebody called Florida for Smart Justice. Anytime you see that the ACLU opposes it, you realize that it's probably got something to do with rights. Okay. And now we come to Amendment 7. Amendment 7 has 3 pieces. It creates mandatory death benefits for surviving spouses of first responders and military members. This is already being done. They already have that. This would put it in the Constitution, so it couldn't be changed. It requires a supermajority vote in both the trustees of the university and also the Board of Governors for anyone to raise or impose university fees and tuition. Fees is sort of a sticking point. Think about the fees that you pay in chemistry lab, for example. That's a little fee. Should that have to go all the way through the Board of Trustees and the Board of Governors before it gets approved? So this is looked upon as a way to limit money to the universities. Establishes a state college system as a constitutional entity. That would mean that Pensacola State College would be under its own umbrella organization, which would be under the Department of Education. And do we need a separate system for that? A vote, yes, would force that supermajority vote. Remember, supermajority is a very high bar, and it adds the framework of state colleges, and it requires death benefits for U.S. military residents and those stationed in Florida, and also first responders. And no would continue to allow just a regular majority vote. It would not set up something separate for state colleges, and it would continue the current practice of providing death benefits to first responders through state law. Who supports it? Who opposes it? Amendment 8, hallelujah, was taken out. We don't get to vote on Amendment 8, which brings us to Amendment 9. This prohibits drilling for oil or gas in Florida's waters. It does not prohibit transporting oil and gas in tankers and stuff in Florida's waters, but it does prohibit the drilling and also the big sonic booms that are used to locate oil and gas. It also prevents vaping, which is e-cigarettes and that kind of stuff, in all those places where it's already prohibited. Smoking is already prohibited. Puts it in the Constitution. Who supports it? Look who opposes it. Number 10. Number 10, also from the CRC, Constitution Revision Commission, it forces all counties to elect their constitutional officers. Now, the constitutional officers are listed there under the 4th bullet. That's the sheriff, tax collector, property appraiser, supervisor of elections, and clerk of court. Right now in Escambia County, those are already elected officials, but there are 20 counties in the state which have charters which take them out of this particular, right now, the way things are done. Some of them have rewritten the job descriptions. They may have even combined some of the jobs, and they may be appointing some of these people instead of electing them. So this takes away the local control from those 20 counties for how they handle these constitutional officers. It also mandates the existence of a State Department of Veterans Affairs. We actually already have one, but this would mandate it and put it in the Constitution. It creates a separate Office of Domestic Security and Terrorism. Right now, this is handled by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And it requires the legislature in even years to start sessions in January. They've been doing that quite adequately already. They decide when they meet. So these are the four things in that particular amendment. And who supports it? Who opposes it? Okay, amendment number 11. I call this a sort of a cleanup amendment. They went through the Constitution and pulled out things that seemed no longer to apply or that were outdated or made no sense. It repeals the state's ability to prohibit non-citizens from buying, owning, and selling property. This law came into existence in the 1920s, and no mechanism has ever been set up to enforce it, and so all of this time it has not been enforced. So taking that out would not change the way things are done. It deletes a provision that forces the state to prosecute criminal suspects under the law under which they were arrested, even if that law has since been changed. So we would get rid of those words and let people be prosecuted under the current law rather than some law that may have already been changed. And you may remember that we voted to have high-speed rail in the Constitution, and about 4 years later we voted to take it out. And the language was never removed, so this just removes that language. So this is sort of a cleanup amendment. Everybody's pretty neutral on this one. Okay, amendment number 12 has to do with lobbying and also with public officials using their office to gain disproportionate benefit. I think it's pretty easy to understand that you don't want people who are regulating some particular thing to be able to regulate it in such a way that they make money. That would be disproportionate benefit. So it tells you that they can't do that. It creates restrictions on paid lobbying by currently serving public officers. This confused me for a while because some current public officers, part of their job is to go talk to the legislature about their agency and stuff. But it does not have to do with that. This means they can't be hired by an outside entity to lobby. So if you are a county commissioner, you can't be paid by Gulf Power to go lobby for your company, for them, rather. And it also expands restrictions on paid lobbying by former public officers. This is legislators and judges. Instead of waiting 2 years before they can take a gig working for somebody else in lobbying, they have to wait 6 years. So that's the things that happen with this one. A vote yes would extend the ban on lobbying to 6 years. And a vote, and it would prohibit legislatures. It does those things I just said, okay? And a vote no would keep in place the current 2-year ban and the current lobbying restrictions. Who supports it? Integrity Florida, Common Cause, and the Florida Policy Institute, and there are no opposing organizations at this time. Number 13. This is the last one. Notice that we skipped 8, so there are only 12. This would ban gambling, wagering on any type of dog racing, although it would not technically stop the racing. But I'm not sure how many dog tracks we'd have if you couldn't gamble. So anyway, it essentially would ban dog racing by December the 31st of 2020. And it does result in some loss of tax revenue. Okay. The one that opposes it is the Florida Greyhound Association. Okay. So what can the League do? Actually, I didn't bring any of the papers for registering people to vote today. But if you need help with that, please let me know, and I can make that arrangement for you. Now I'm going to talk for a minute about the 2 referendums that will appear on Escambia County ballots, not Santa Rosa, and obviously not Alabama, but this would be on Escambia County. Okay, there's a non-binding referendum. This means they're just getting your opinion. There's a non-binding referendum on Escambia County policy for preservation of Santa Rosa Island. That's Pensacola Beach out there. On June the 21st, the Escambia County Board of County Commissioners adopted a policy to prohibit any privatization through sale or lease of currently unleased properties, especially conservation and preservation properties on Santa Rosa Island. And the way you vote is Escambia County reaffirms the congressional restrictions on the 1947 deed. Do you support the Escambia County policies? And I can't tell you what all those restrictions are, but what this does is if something is currently unleased, it can't be sold or leased. It protects, particularly the preservation properties. And you vote yes or no. And then there is a binding referendum. This is a vote that counts. This is a vote that will change things if you vote in a certain way. This one has to do with the school district superintendent of schools. Shall the superintendent of schools of Escambia County be appointed by the school board of Escambia County, Florida? Right now, the superintendent of schools is elected in Escambia County. This means he has to raise money, he has to campaign, and the restrictions on who can be the superintendent of schools are two. He has to live in the county, and he has to be of good moral character. He doesn't have to demonstrate any other particular skills or expertise. So that's under the current system. The school board is elected by us, so this gives us choice, and they would then cast a wider net and decide who would make the best school superintendent, and they don't have to live in Escambia County, and they have to have a little bit more than just good moral character. They would set up their own criteria for who they were looking at. Okay, shall the superintendent of schools of Escambia County be appointed by the school board of Escambia County? Yes or no? And that's what's on your ballot. There are 3 ways to vote. I recommend getting your ballot by mail, even if you decide later that you want to go in and cast the ballot. This gives you the ballot ahead of time, like this piece of paper. You can make sure that you know how you feel about the things you're going to be required to vote on. Can you imagine reading through 12 constitutional amendments while standing in the polling booth while the line is growing behind you? Just imagine. Okay. Be ready to vote. There is information on our local candidates at vote411.org. I think that is listed on here. In here, the statewide candidates answered questions when they chose to. You'll notice who did and didn't choose to answer questions. Okay.